Hello guys, I'm back with another video on promise. So today I'm going to elaborate promise in much more detail. What are the methods it has? Like in my previous video, if you haven't checked out, please do check out. I'll provide a link in the description box below. But in this video, I'm going to tell what the promises offers to us and how we can leverage that beauty. So promises, like I've first of all, I've seen a lot of people or a lot of students were studying promises in other websites, like some of the common websites. I don't want to name them, but they are very good for beginners. But I would recommend even for the beginners also, you should check out this Ambient Docs website. Like if you didn't find this thing, let me just tell you like how you can find it out. So go to the promise, just type promise, and you will see the first link, developermozilla.org, and you go to this page and you'll arrive that promise page. Please refer to this document before implementing any promise so that you can get an idea what the promises are and what it has. It has so many different methods, and this is a very good documentation for promise and for any JavaScript method. Like if you need to find out any JavaScript thing, you can go to the MDN web docs and you can check out here. It will provide a whole documentation in depth. It is a very good source of information. So coming to the promise, today we are going to see, today I'm going to explain you what are the promises, methods and members inside it. How it is built, basically that we are going to see in this video. So we are not going to see any implementation in this video. For if you are looking for some implementation or practice or promise, please do check out my next video. That is I'm going to create after this video. But because like I'll go step by step. First I've explained what the promises is. Now I'm going to explain what promises offers to us, like what are the methods that are available to us that we can use in the promises. So let's just go and see what are the methods available inside the promise. So promise is basically available with a promise uh, variable, or I would say this is a wrapper class. Sorry, promise. And then to see the methods, I would say prototype. I'll create a separate video over the prototype, what the prototype is. But since this video is on promises, so I'll just explain you about the promises, just to shorten the length of the video and don't want to go on to the different topic. This is a very big topic. So let's just see what promises offers to us. So promises are basically like as yeah, in my previous video you have seen that I've explained in detail via diagram. Their catch method, constructor, and finally and then. We earlier talked about the catch and then method, right? Then methods are basically if those are the people who didn't refer to my video. Please do check out other also, let me just complete this concept, what the promises and then methods are, for those who are new to this video. So then method is basically a method or handler basically. I'll just write out the comment here. Handler, then method. Then method is basically a handler to handle all those requests that are resolved. Handler for all requests that are resolved and resolved. What do you mean by this? Resolved means when we have make the request to the server and we got the data and it is resolved, then it says this then method will be called, right? So in order to do this thing, you can do this way also, promise.resolve, and provide the value to it, 3 or 4 or something like this. So this will mimic the resolution of the data. So we are not making any call to the server, but what we are saying is resolve this promise by the value of 4. So we are providing the value 4 to it, right? So then method is this thing. So you got an idea. This is a resolution handler for promises. Catch method, catch is on the another hand, it is basically meant for catching the errors which is being thrown by the promises. So for an example, if we made a request to the server and that didn't get successful, at some point of time it will throw an error. That error will be cached inside the catch function. So this catch function, like again, the catch for catch syntax for catch is basically promise, this will be little different. Promise and then the resolution and then catch, right? You have to provide a callback function to it. Callback function, right? Here handler function, resolve function, and a reject function, right? This is a basic syntax for promises. Syntax for promise, I would say. Let me just cover it. I think I should have covered it before, but no problem at all. So this is a syntax for promises where this dot then method will be called and then catch method. At any point of time, you can call this catch method. If you want the catch method to be called here, this will also work and this will also work. You can simultaneously vice versa do the things as per your need. So what we are saying, like the resolve function will be like if the data is resolved, then the resolve function will be called. This is a callback function, and this is a reject function which will be called when the rejection happens at the server, or like if the rejection happens at the promise. So the catch and then method is basically for catch and then method. When this has been resolved, then the then method will be called. Then method again can have two methods to it, right? And the callback function, now you can chain it also. So this is a basic syntax for a promise. So let's just go by one method and let's just see what this offers to us. So catch method, catch is basically for catching all those errors inside this. So let's say if any of the error comes in, or if this throws an error, then it will catch that error inside this block, inside this function, right? So another method is constructor function, and after that this is a finally function. Did you remember this traditional try catch methods, right? Where we let's just say try and then catch and then okay. So let me just open the source panel. Yep, this is. I've already typed. I've already typed for it for you. So did you remember this try catch method where we used to have a finally method which calls, like if something goes wrong and it throws an exception, then the catch method will get called for that exception, right? And we will catch that exception inside this block, right? But the finally methods are being called when the things are completed from this side as well as from the catch side. For example, if we are making a database call and that database is like we have opened the connection, open connection with the database. Now, like to handle all those cases, to handle error cases, this will be called error cases. And then finally will be handy when we are going to close that connection once we are done with processing. So close database connection, right? These are the things that we are going to do. So similarly, in a similar fashion, the finally method is being called once we are done with all those handlers, resolution handlers, as well as the rejection handlers, right? So this is a finally method that we can append at the end so that we can do the final task out of it. And the constructor function, let's just see what the constructor functions offers to us. So constructor function, let me just clear it for, yep. So the constructor function is basically a constructing an object out of that promise method. uh, is a constructor function. Constructor is basically constructing an object out of this promise function, right? So I'm creating another object of the promise so that I can work work on a new promise object, right? So that is what I'm creating. I'm creating a new promise. So let's just say a new promise promise object, or promise and new promise, right? This is how this will be called, and we need to provide any some such kind of error, otherwise it will throw an error that's saying that, hey, you didn't provide an resolver function to it. So what we can do is, in order to resolve this problem, we just need to provide an callback function. So I'm just using the callback arrow function for now. Console.log a, and here, so the promise is defined here, right? Now what I've done is, like, I've created another constructor on another promise variable by using the constructor. Constructor can be called with a new keyword. If you didn't put the new keyword, it will not call an constructor function. This is how the constructor function will be called, right? This new keywords is helpful to create an generate an instance of promise. So to check the promise instance, what I can do is, like, I have a promise instance of and promise, right? Now you can find, like, the promise is an instance of promise, which is basically I'm just constructing an object out of promise method, right? This is the constructor method. Let's just go beyond the constructor, how the constructor function have all other methods inside it. So let me just erase it, right? We have created a promise object, and now we will see what promises offers to us. Okay, so let me just promise dot const dot methods, right? So these are the methods that are available, or, like, if I say promise, this would be a theme. So promise, what it offers, like, what are the methods available to it. Even you can do different kind of things, like, if I go to here earlier, as I explained, and if I expand it, you will find all other methods that are available inside the constructor function. Constructor function, when it returns an object, it encapsulates an object with certain methods and properties. That methods are available here. All method, so promise has all method, all settled, prototype, race, reject, result, and all other stuff. So we are going to cover some basic methods here so that you can get an understanding what these methods are. All method is basically for resolving all the promises at once. For example, if I am having a multiple promise, let's say let promise one and promise two. For much better understanding, I just create an object of promise one in array, and like this, and I can call promise dot all, and this way. So promise dot all, what it will do is, like, it can resolve. It will go and put an API call. If you are having an API call, it will put all other API call, or it is trying to resolve multiple promises at once. It will try to resolve multiple promises at once, right? at single point of time it will make it will try to resolve all other promises. But there's a one downside of the all method, which you going which like for which just let me just explain it before the word says, because so the all method has a one downside, which is basically uh, if any of the promise gets like let's say if I'm having number of promises, right, but in between one of the promises gets rejected, then the promises all method will be the promises all method like this is not going to call other promises methods. This is a very downside to it. Let's just say in order to understand much better, for an example, I'm just repeating myself. Promise 1, you have provided a promise 1, promise 2 and promise 3. Assume that promise 1 is resolved and promise 2 is going to be resolved, but it is rejected, and till the time promise 3 is being uh, placed and request to the server, but now the promise 2 gets rejected, it will not wait for this promise at all. It will directly return an error saying that hey, you got an rejection from the promise 2. It is not going to wait. To resolve this problem or to fix this problem, the developers came with a solution called all settled method. Settled. Now all settled, what it does, it basically it has a similar syntax, but it waits for each and every methods, each and every promises that to be resolved or rejected. So let's say if some of them are rejected, if some of them are fulfilled, then it will return an array. It will return an array of resolutions, solutions as well as errors, right? Return an array of responses, right? Resolution means responses, responses array, right? Which will consist of all errors respective to the promise, respective to the promises. So this is what all settled comes in. So this basically resolves the problem that all was having it. It is introduced in ES6, right? So now coming to the another method, which is race. Race is basically, in order to understand the race is basically saying I'm having a multiple, I've placed a multiple promises here, and this is going to call one let's say promise 1 is 1 request, 2 request, 3rd request, right? And so on. So whichever request gets fulfilled first, so let me just, whichever request gets fulfilled first will re- will be will return will return will return the response. It means it will not wait for other promises to be completed. It is saying like a race is basically I'm racing the functions, and in between racing uh, any of the promises that is gets resolved, then other promises are going to be left, but the the promise that got the response will be resolved and returned back to us. It will not wait for promise 1 and promise 3. So for an example, promise 1 get the data, and promise 2 and promise 3 are still waiting for that resolution. So promise 1 will return that response to us. It will not wait for the promise 2. So it will race is basically racing the conditions. So promise is like I'm racing in between the three members. So whosoever gets first, this will be announced as an winner, right? So this is a race method. Now we will come to the next method. This is a reject. Sorry for Reject and resolve. Reject and resolve, these are like these are the methods which are for the multiple promises, right? Here this is the syntax for them. Now reject and resolve, these are the two states of the promise, right? Reject means I am rejecting some data, right? So it will return that hey, I got an uncaught error, right? But if I say promise dot resolve and 4, this will say hey, you got an data, right? Resolved state, you got the resolved state. So these are the two states basically. When you didn't get the data, you basically says that hey, you can pass an error object inside it, and it will throw an exception to the function that hey, you got an rejection, and the resolve is basically resolving a data. So this is how the promises works, or basically these are the methods available in the inside the promises. So like in this video, I've covered all those methods available inside the promises. So if you do have any problem, or if you didn't understand much clearly in any of the method, please do write me in comment section below. I'll try to reply as soon as possible with all other comments, and I'll try to explain much better in detail if needed. Right? For now, this is the promises methods that are available. In the next video, I'll try to implement the promises where you will see each and every method will gets an implementation to it. So that will be a fun part, because in all other methods we are going to see how we can use the promises method inside the JavaScript. So that's it guys. Thank you so much. I'm your host Amit Agrawal. Please do like and subscribe for my videos if you learned anything from this video. Please, thanks. Thank you so much.